Welcome to the Intuitive Therapist Podcast with Janis R. Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as the angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis R. Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist here on the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. Welcome to another week. I cannot begin to tell you how excited I am to have this special lady on today. She has been pivotal in my life to shift some major things for me that have truly redirected my life, and I want to share that with you. But today I'm going to be talking to Dr. Katie Rose, and she is a naturopathic doctor. She's certified hypnosis practitioner and holistic fertility expert who guides her patients and clients through the difficult world of infertility, supporting them in body, mind, and spirit to achieve healthy pregnancies. And while fertility is her main passion, the ripple effects of doing the deep emotional, subconscious, and spiritual work with her clients that we're going to talk about today has led to, releasing generations of old patterns, trauma, and ways of being. And I'll tell you, I can attest to this. And probably wondering, Janice, why are you having a fertility expert on your show? And I will tell you exactly why in just a moment. But in addition to defying the fertility odds, her clients experience massive breakthroughs in business, finances, relationships as they step into their most powerful identity. And at the end, I'm going to give you a link to her freebie. I'm going to give you her Instagram handle. I think that's what they call it, Instagram handle. And probably by the end of this episode, you're going to want to be reaching out to her. Truly, one of the most positive experiences of my life. And I've been a therapist for 32 years. It's a long time, but to have some new breakthrough experience in my life with the limiting beliefs that I was holding blew me away. So welcome, Dr. Katie Rose.
Oh, thank you for having me, Janice. That intro just
No, it was
oh my gosh, that's like
so
when someone
exciting.
describes like the emoji of heart explosions. I like, you could feel the expansion, and I just am so honored to have had an opportunity to work with you, and now to be here and talk about what I do is really exciting. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, y'all. So let me give you the backstory here. A few weeks ago, I can't remember how long, probably a few weeks ago, within a month, I was really struggling. And y'all know I'm very transparent on this podcast. I share every aspect of my life with you because I truly believe that whatever I've learned, there's a saying in my life that has come true for sure. Learn, grow, teach. And so anything that I learned, anything that I've grown from, anything that I've triumphed over, and even current struggles, I share with you because my intention is for you to grow and triumph as well. And so about a month ago, I really hit a rough patch and I was struggling with some limiting beliefs. And I do limiting belief work every day. I'm human, and so that's just our nature. When we level up, we hit. There's a saying, "New level, new devil," and so I was in that process, and I had talked with Katie about this before, but I'd hit this plateau in my business of sorts, and I didn't know what to do, and there's no way around me fixing it on my own, and so we are a part of a beautiful community of business owners and digital course creators. And I had reached out, kind of like a waving my flag. I need some help with this. And can somebody help me, please, eliminate these limiting beliefs that I have because they're crippling me? And she was so kind to offer her time and her energy and her expertise and skill. And it was beyond, and I want to share this with you because we are going to be talking about her expertise in fertility and the magic that she's been able to create with the people in her program. I definitely want to focus on that. But today, just to start off with, we're going to be talking about this quantum time technique that she used with me. Like I said, it was magical. It was transformative. I literally was able to see the specific initial root cause of the belief that I held. And I tend to be a very visual person anyway, so it's always easier for me to see things. But with a very quick induction, um, I was able to go back to that. And I was also able to see where uh, up until the current point in my life, all of my past lives met my current life. And the difference, literally, in the color of all of my past lives along this spectrum, and then my future, which looked unbelievably bright. So I don't know how else to say this, but I want to start to ask you, Katie, explain what this quantum technique is, the
Sure.
ins and outs of it, the because it I y'all and I'm getting trained in this for sure because it was beyond life changing. So tell
Right,
us
it's almost hard to describe until
and
you experience
ah
it, right? But, essentially, after we have an understanding of, like, what is showing up in your current reality, and then we do this data mining where we try to understand, like, what is the belief or the emotion that is at the root cause of this way of being that when moved will essentially allow you to have this identity shift
mm,
and create what you do want and have that empowerment to have that success that you want now, and also be able to just find so much more presence in the moment, right? Be able to actually find the joy and the peace and the satisfaction in the day to day while you are moving towards that future success that you desire. So in understanding what the belief might be, and this is where having help is so powerful, because as you know, like, you are an expert in your field, you work with limiting beliefs every day, but we can't see our own blind spots.
oh,
And so
100%.
when we get someone from the outside looking in and can ask us questions differently, it just gives us so much more space to bring those to the surface. Because then the whole point of limiting belief and, subconscious beliefs is, well, they're subconscious, so we are not
I
consciously
know.
aware of them. So
Right. There you go.
and so this timeline work with quantum time technique essentially asks people to elicit how they store time so that you can visualize your past and your future. And essentially the way brain stores time is like our future is stored in the same place as our past memories. So, what we imagine for ourselves in the future, that imagination process, the brain doesn't have a differentiation from a past memory. So, this is a really powerful piece of information to understand, because when we go back and change our relationship to the past,
Mm,
conscious or subconscious experiences, we then can redirect more towards what we want in the future. We can gather all of that wisdom rather than, the patterns that are holding us back.
oh, for sure.
So
Yeah.
for you, and we ask, like, where is this old belief? What was the root cause of this belief that when disconnected will allow you to move forward with a new decision and a new way of being?
Mm,
And, some people will take us to an event in childhood, usually from the age of 0 to 7, when we're, forming our identities, and all of our, parental and educational systems are really
all that
working on the
conditioning. Yeah.
subconscious.
Yeah.
Yes. But sometimes it will take us generations back. And we know that there is, generational trauma that essentially changes how our DNA is expressed. Sometimes people will tell of a memory that was lifetimes ago, and whether
Is
that's
what
a
I did.
metaphor,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's a metaphor that the brain is using for healing, or, truly it was many lifetimes ago, we may never know for a fact. But the result of people really being able to shed those decisions and create the new decision.
Mm.
is where the power is, because there's so much talk I think about, well, you got to let go of this, you got to let go of that, and it's like, well, okay, great, but what do you want instead?
That is
I
so
think I think we all, and I mean, I'm guilty of this too, like, it's very easy to know what we don't want and to be able to understand what we're trying to move away from, but that creates this experience where we're, like, always looking over our shoulder of, like, "Oh, I don't want that," and I'm kind of running away from it,
yeah.
but it really truly allows this release where you can move forward and
So
turn forward.
I love that. I love and that's I know that that's what happened with me. And I know that when I came to you, I f- uh, my business had plateaued. It wasn't moving. It wasn't growing. Interesting what's happening in my throat right now. Y'all listen to this because this is what's part of what was that we cleared. Anyway, okay, this
And
is
literally, we will have physical
literally.
manifestations of it too.
See, there you go. So I didn't know how to move beyond that. I didn't know how to break through that barrier, and I didn't understand it. No matter what oracle cards I pulled, and no matter what channeling I did, it wasn't showing up the real root cause. And so I reached out to Katie, and she did this process with me. And y'all know my gifts: clairvoyant, empath, psychic, medium. Like that's been me all of my lifetimes. And I have been persecuted, I have been killed, I have been chased, I have been punished, I've been in prison, all of that in all of my lifetimes. And what ended up happening is that she had asked me, and I don't know the exact question, but it was like, okay, go back to the originating event. It was something of that nature. And I was immediately pulled back, way back in my timeline. And it was, I mean, I think I told her it was like 100 lifetimes ago, and it could be. I mean, there's no limit to the amount of lifetimes we've had. But I clearly saw myself. I was a woman cloaked in, it was black cloak, and I was on the ground in the Roman era, Greek Roman era, and this man who was in this armor was ready to stab me with a whatever it was, a stake, and I was really, I was about to die. And so once we were able to access that, I'm like, oh my God, that's where all of this originated from. That I can't level up, I can't show up, I can't be seen, I can't grow, I can't, all these I can'ts, right? And she was able to help me eliminate that and then shift powerfully into this future that, if you can imagine, like walking on a tightrope, and this is how it was for me, walking on a tightrope, and half of it where the current is connected to the past is a very dark brown line. And then when the past connects to the future, it's literally this glittery, light, beautiful, clear way forward. And we were able to cut that off. And I clearly heard Spirit say to me, it ends at 55, and I'm 55 next month. So it was, and that's just a snippet. But the question she asked and the way she did it was just, it was beyond. It was beyond. I don't know what else to tell you, but like I said, I'm getting trained in this because it's just going to make my work more powerful, and just will be forever grateful for you for your generosity of time and energy and help. And so I want to get into, for you, how did you get into this work? Like, I'm spilling all the beans with me.
Yeah.
So how did you get into this?
Yeah, so I had been a practicing naturopathic physician for, I've been in practice for over 10 years. So it was probably about the halfway point in this practicing of medicine. I was like, gosh, there's just a lot of people who they're doing all the right things physically,
For
but
fertility.
yeah, yeah, for
Yes.
fertility. And but they're doing all the right things. Sometimes they've been doing all the right things, like they're eating well, they're taking their supplements, they're sleeping well, their detox systems are working, and maybe they've even pursued treatments like IVF, and that's still not giving them a result of a pregnancy. And it's such an emotional
Oh,
experience. And it's such a frustrating experience. And there's a lot that's not talked about in those treatments, right? Because it is just a very physical, like, here's your medication, here's your shots, here's when your surgeries are scheduled, etc. And I just felt like there was this huge gap in care. Like, we're focusing so much on the physical body, but we're not focusing on the mental, emotional, spiritual. So, about 5 years ago, I started developing an online program for fertility that did have more of this mind body component. And we started to see, faster results as people were able to acknowledge, validate, process emotions much more effectively. And still, there would be pieces that were missing, right? And this is like the subconscious link. And meanwhile, COVID starts. I'm at home, I'm working from home with a toddler and an infant, and I'm seeing patients via telemedicine full time. I'm running this program on the side, and I just got burnt out. And my rendition of burnout manifested as when we got COVID, I had some post COVID symptoms that, I pushed through, but I really wasn't listening to my own body.
Yeah.
And I had an experience where my husband had gone out of town for a conference, and while he was gone, the kids and I all got stomach flu, and I hadn't slept for like 3 days. It was just like a constant barrage of like
Oof.
cleaning up after sick people. And it was just awful. And I'm still kind of in the fog of like this post COVID brain fog, fatigue. And he comes home. He goes back to work the next morning. I'm trying to make the lunches for the kids. Both of them are like yanking on me, asking for things. And I just like, I've had like a breakdown is all
Yeah.
I could describe it. It's like I was making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and I just like threw the knife down through the bread and it was just like, I can't. Like,
Yeah.
and I like threw what anyone would call basically like a temper tantrum. And I just like ran to my bedroom and slammed the door and I kicked a hole in the wall.
Good
And
girl. Way to get that energy out. I like it.
all that energy came out all right. And And I was like, "Oh, that was an interesting way of handling things. I think I need some help." Like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
that was a turning point. I joke that, like, that was my breakthrough. It was breaking down that wall,
Yeah, literally, right?
and literally, because it was this turning point of like, "All right, I'm not gonna allow myself to feel shame around this response
Good.
because it is just this is my entire being saying that we need to be doing things differently
Mm,
and we need to be asking for help differently. We need different tools. We need to slow down. And it was at that point that I had been listening to a podcast for a long time called the Zesty Ginger podcast, now called Becoming Zesty. And I had initially started listening to it because it was all about hormones and gut health. And it was, very parallel to the world that I was working in. And I had noticed that they had started changing what they were talking about.
mm,
And they had started talking about subconscious reprogramming. And one of the hosts, Megan Blacksmith, was extremely transparent about a lot of the struggles that she had been through in her life, her health, her relationship, and how working through the subconscious had been extremely powerful for her.
yeah.
And there was one particular episode that I'd listened to that really resonated with me, and I had just reached out to her to say, like, this was an amazing podcast episode. Like, thank you so much for your authenticity. And we ended up connecting and becoming friends. And through that, as she started to train other people in neurolinguistic programming and hypnosis and quantum time technique, I just knew intuitively that I had to do that. Even if it was just for me and
Yes.
my own healing, I needed to do this. And the ripple effect of that has been that, I've been able to help so many more people on a deeper level. But even just for my own well being,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I needed something to shift.
Mm, that's amazing. That's amazing. And the work that you've been doing, one of the things that you mentioned is that you know, a lot of the times traditional Western mm, processes, they don't work. There's a reason why
Yeah.
women don't get some women don't get pregnant quickly, right? You can do all the right things, all the things, and then it still doesn't happen, right? And so then you bring in this piece of the body mind connection and understanding that there are literally things in your subconscious that are preventing your body from doing what it needs to be doing and could be
Yeah.
doing, and preventing you from moving forward. I'll say for me in my life, in this aspect of my life that I shared with you, that there was this subconscious energy and messaging that I had to let go of. And no, you can't always do it cognitively. It would be wonderful. We're like, oh no, I'm going to think differently. No, there's some real energy there that needs to be moved and eliminated and deleted. And what matters most for sure is the focus. But what you talk about that there's a ripple effect of doing deeper emotional spiritual work, especially when it comes to fertility. I mean, that's magic. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, if you care to share a couple of stories or maybe one really amazing story where you went this route and you said, you know what, you've done all the things. Let's do this. And a victory story. I'd love to hear about that because I do know I wasn't able to have kids, and that was a heartbreak for me. But I also know that spiritually, I've been a mother many times in my life, in other lifetimes. It just wasn't in the cards for me this lifetime. I had other things to do. But for women who absolutely want to become mothers and they've tried all the things, tell us about the ripple effect with this.
Yeah. So I am of course one who I don't want to ignore physical signs
Yeah.
and how we can support the body physically. But within this work, I will give a victory story. It's a client who's on my mind because she is due to have her baby tomorrow. She's scheduled for her cesarean tomorrow. So she's on my heart this week. And she had come to me 5 years ago uh, to have her first baby. She had been trying for about 3 years at that point, had been through multiple failed assisted reproductive technology treatments. She was feeling extremely depressed about her situation. And, I think she just really needed someone to be able to look at things differently with her
Mhm.
and have her be a part of the team conversation. And she actually conceived her son really quickly. She had a generally uncomplicated pregnancy, but she experienced postpartum preeclampsia. It's like very soon after delivery. And it was a unique situation. I created a lot of trauma. And so when it came time for her to start thinking about having another baby, there was a lot of emotional fear about what had happened with the end of that pregnancy, the delivery, and the postpartum experience. And even though she conceived fairly quickly again with the tools that we used from the physical standpoint, she miscarried,
Mm.
and that miscarriage was also really challenging because there were some complications afterwards that were really overlooked by her obstetrical team. Her OBGYN really neglected a couple of things that again created even more trauma
Mm.
within her experience. And so it was at that time that I was finishing up my training in this work, and I had been talking to her a little bit about it. She was like, I don't know what it is, but I know I'm not good at emotions, and there's stuff here. And so sign me up. And
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so, what we did initially with her was called clearing the big six, which is clearing the six emotions that tend to contain a lot of energy. So, anger, sadness, fear, hurt, guilt, and shame. And this is someone who is a largely practical person. She has a strong science background. She has a master's in business administration. She runs her own company. She is the CEO. Like this is like a powerful,
Yeah.
rational being.
Yes.
And she doesn't have, at that time, she didn't have much of a spiritual connection to herself or outward. And it was within the first session that she had a really powerful breakthrough. She actually had her grandmother who had recently passed come through to her during that session. And I mean, for both of us, because I was like still rather new at this at the time, for both of us, we were like, what is that? She was like, is that normal? And I was like, I don't know, but I'm going with it because it feels powerful.
Yeah.
By the time we cleared fear, we were both like just completely sucked in. Like, this is something is working, something is shifting. She was sleeping better. Like, she hadn't been sleeping well for months. She was starting to feel more confident. And when we cleared fear, it actually took her back to a memory that she identified as several lifetimes ago in the Victorian era as a woman who had died during childbirth.
Oh, wow.
And being able to clear the fear from that and collect all the wisdom and the
Mm.
learning from it to carry forward instead of the fear gave her a lot more empowerment. She actually conceived shortly after. And so as we got to the end of, clearing those emotions and then clearing some of the limiting decisions that she had so that she could trust her body to carry this pregnancy forward, she said, obviously this stuff worked for the goal we had, but I'm also noticing some really powerful shifts in my business. Like, she had been running this business for years at this point and had had several areas that had been quite stuck that had started to flow differently.
I'll agree. I
So,
mean, it's true. I'll hands down, yes, that happened to
yes.
me too.
So
Yes.
she noticed that things in her business were flowing differently in a really powerful, expansive way. She noticed that relationships that she had had that had previously been so triggering weren't having the same impact on her anymore. When she was able to approach these from a different state without the reactivity that had
Mm.
previously been present because she was carrying these old patterns, these old traumas, she was able to create this much safer space for other people to be in as well. So it's created more positive relationships with her family, with extended family, with she has some sibling half sibling rivalry sort of things that had been occurring, that
Yeah.
she was just like, this is not where my energy
Mm.
needs to be. And when she was able to like let things go that weren't in high service for her, a new path opened up with more positivity.
Amazing. Y'all, you may think this sounds like a made up story. I'm telling you, um, this this shit works. This shit is for real. It
It really
works.
does.
I don't know how else to say it. It's beyond powerful. Now, with this woman, and typically when you work with somebody, like we met once,
Hmm.
and because I was just being present, I wasn't paying attention to how you got me down to that particular belief, or I know I was feeling a lot of deep things at that time. But how many sessions does it take, even for somebody who's not dealing with fertility issues, but for somebody in general who wants to get some help with this? How many sessions does it typically take to see a significant shift? Do you have to go through all the six emotions at one time, or do you meet six times? Like, what's the process?
Yeah, there is flexibility within that. And so some of it will depend for me on the story that I am hearing
Okay,
from someone. So for someone like you, who you have a lot of experience, you're a therapist, you're an intuitive, you likely have had a lot of resources for processing emotions
for sure.
for years,
And I
right?
work on that all the time.
Yeah. So you have tools. So for someone who, like, I have a good sense that they have a lot of tools for processing emotions, we might just get right into the meat of those beliefs. And one session can make a
Yeah.
hugely powerful difference. But when I'm encountering someone who has never had this opportunity to acknowledge, name, process their emotions, that's a situation in which we're likely going to do several sessions, and
Mhm.
we'll start with clearing those big six, there might be other emotions, of course, too, that arise within that. And then get to clearing the beliefs, because if we start with the beliefs and decisions, but there's some deeper emotions under there, we may just not get the level of powerful clearing that we hope to if we haven't dealt with the emotional piece. And throughout my work with people, I am weaving in resources for emotional processing,
And then
because as you peel back these layers, people may find that, like, there's discomfort in growth.
oh
And it can
yeah, you wouldn't think so, right? You think, oh my gosh, who would be scared of success?
Mhm.
Typically people are scared of failure, like, just like looking back on looking at the things that you don't want. It's very easy to do that. But when you talk to people or in general about, gosh, well, what about the good things? Or what about success? And all of a sudden there's some stuff there. That's a whole different ballgame of up leveling, and that it's scary. It's scary because what I have found, and please interrupt because you know me, I interrupt. What I have
Yeah.
found is that every time, I'll say for me, that I have up leveled, um, it's required new and different things
Yeah.
from me. And I may be practicing some old patterns, right? I talked about this whole past life experience that I've had in all of my past lives where I was punished deeply, killed, all that stuff from showing up in my truth. And so
Yeah.
in this lifetime, this is something that I am settling. I'm settling that debt. That will be done in this lifetime, I am certain. That's how committed I am. But uh it can be quite scary because as much as we all want the fancy things and the money, the house, the cars, the time off, all of this, the truth is the more of that you want, the more of you must become.
Yeah.
And this work, ooh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah, you
so
you will
so so
learn
good.
things. You will
Yeah.
learn things about yourself. And when we peel back those layers, when we kind of move the curtain aside, that growth can be uncomfortable. It can also lead to some of the most powerful relationship experiences, career experiences. And it really is for the people who are willing to do this work.
Yeah.
Like, it
It's
is
not scary,
expansive
y'all,
and
by the way.
illustrative.
I just want to say it's not scary at all. Like, first of all,
Yeah, I find the quantum time technique to be a really positive experience for people, especially for people who've experienced other forms of trauma processing, even like EMDR, can maybe be a little bit triggering in
mm,
a way. What I really appreciate about a quantum time technique is you're not leaving any of those little hanging pieces of, like, oh, okay, well, now you got to just go home and sleep on it and see how you process things. It's like, no, we are going to collect all the wisdom until you say you are done. And in
and that's
doing
true.
so, it is an extremely positive experience. But the growth process in general, what might be most uncomfortable for some people is if people around them are not also
Yeah,
growing
yeah, that's a
and
tough one.
choosing that path, then it can be powerful to see the changes in yourself, but then also frustrating to see that other people could be using these tools and they're not using these tools. And
Yeah,
and then it feels like, well, what the fuck? Like,
right,
what are they doing?
right.
Why aren't they growing?
Yeah.
And that's where, acceptance and surrendering, like, okay, I can only change myself.
Mm.
I can lead the horse to water, but I can't expect them to drink. I can't expect other people to change. They might not be ready for it. And you're
And
gonna
you
have to
have
be
to risk
okay with
that.
that.
You have to
Yeah.
risk that. And the reason why I say you have to risk it is because I think anybody that and I found that doing this in the women that I've talked to, that I focus on women in midlife in their 50s who want to reignite their passion, purpose, and personal power. What I've heard over and over again is, well, how are the people around me going to be? What's going to happen in my relationships if I change? And you have to be willing to, I'm not saying burn down all your relationships, but certainly let go of the ones that don't serve you, but also give yourself the gift. of stepping into the fullness of who you are, your full
Absolutely.
potential. And there's a beauty in doing that where you may not even see how you're impacting other people by being a role model. And people's interest might be ignited because they see you as a happier, freer, more profitable person. And when I say profitable, I mean in all ways: abundance, time, energy, spirit, all of that. That to me, that's profitability. So this work is, oh, it's just so good, so good, so good, so good. And God bless me with you. I swear to God, and you felt it too. You're like, God, I felt like I needed to reach out. And Katie had listened to my podcast for a bit, and thank God she reached out because it was life changing. And um, I don't hesitate to ask for help. I am very humble that way because I know I need it, right? And there are people that do things differently, and there are people that can do things better. And so why not go to those people, right?
Yeah.
So anybody that's considering this for sure is, y'all, it's game changer. And the best gift you can give yourself is to be able to self develop. I mean, and you will. Life isn't about keeping the same people in your life all the time. We have to outgrow people because everybody's working on different timelines, and that's exactly what this is talking about. So now I'm curious how, if somebody wants to do this work but has some resistance, what do you work on first?
Mm. With the resistance, there's some fear underneath that. And so we just explore it. We just get very curious. This work for me is about releasing all judgment and truly stepping into just the most compassionate, curious state of mind. Saying like, okay, well, if you didn't have resistance, like what might occur instead, and really exploring like what is coming up for someone around, a fear of change.
Yes.
And are people not going to like you because you change? Is your partnership going to be different in a bad way because you are choosing to change? Uh, there is usually something there and that might be the first belief that we clear
Yeah. Yeah.
within that. I've even had clients one in particular who, as you may recall, when we ask the unconscious mind what the root cause of the belief or the emotion was, I'll then ask you to float above your timeline, float back into the past to that event. And I've had a client who, thankfully, because I had worked with her for so long in conceiving her first child, there was already trust, there was already rapport. So she wanted to do this work, but for the life of her, for the first few sessions, she could not float above her timeline. Like there was so much resistance that her unconscious was just like, nope, we're not going there yet.
Right.
So we had to work around it a little bit differently. Instead, in her case, we did more traditional hypnosis for a couple of sessions just to build safety, to build trust within herself, to know that like you are in the right place at the right time for healing.
Beautiful.
And then eventually, like, she was able to actually do the work where we float up above the timeline and go to the event. And now that piece is effortless.
Yes.
And
So good.
as we've, peeled back the layers in preparation for her also to have her next child, there is also so much healing that has happened around, family trauma events in
Mm,
her case.
mhm.
Um, and what I really appreciate in this person is she's in a partnership where her partner is doing the work as well.
Oh, well, that's
And
beautiful.
so they are both doing this. And in his case, being raised in a family that was extremely patriarchal in their approach to emotions, um, and he has a young daughter and he wants to have more children with his wife. He's like, I don't want to raise my children the same way that I was raised.
Right.
Even if we don't have another child, I want my relationship with this child to be different. I
Mm,
want her to know that it's okay, that it's safe to be who she really is. And so the ripple effect in this relationship is that, both people are finding the safety to be who they really are so that their children can be safe to be who they really are. And so, you know, what I feel my biggest role on this planet is to help people welcome in this generation of healers
Mm,
that are ready to step in. And if we are so caught up in our own muck
yep.
that we can't allow people to just step in and do what they're meant to do with the gifts they have, we're just going
Are
to
we
keep
going?
repeating these same
Yeah,
old patterns.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Like,
I
I don't
think
know where this planet's going if we don't
right
continue this work.
in the trash can, but we won't intend for that. But it is beautiful when you have a supportive partner. If you're lucky enough to have a supportive partner that is insightful and is open. I think um, a lot of people don't, and it's very sad.
Yeah.
It's very sad, but that shouldn't stop you from growing and stepping into the life you're called to live. And so I want to talk a little bit. When we talk about eliminating limiting beliefs, that phrase, I think, just like the word, the words authenticity and transform, I hate those words.
I know,
I
right?
do because they're so overused and narcissist. They're very overused, and so people will just vomit those all over the place and onto everything and everybody without really understanding what that is. Now, in this case, you've heard a little bit of what Katie's talked about, and literally, you with this work, you get to the belief of that particular emotion that you're experiencing, and because you're going back to the root cause, very similar to past life regression, where you connect with the
Yeah.
energy of the root cause of that, and once you make that conscious unconscious connection, it's like psh, all of a sudden the energy of that is dismantled and eliminated. There's a piece of that I know I experienced, and that's what's so powerful, is because the limiting belief, y'all know what that is. It's a belief that holds you back, it limits you, right? And so when you eliminate the energy of that, it doesn't exist. The energy stops impacting you, right? And the beautiful part, which Katie mentioned, is it's not just we shift energy or eliminate energy, it's we're focusing on what's possible. And the beautiful part is, and I've talked about this a lot on this show, is learning how to ask different questions that open up possibilities for you
Yeah.
instead of the yes or no and only, well, what's the worst that you can think of happening, instead of, but what's the best that you can consider? Is it possible that, like, I love asking this question to clients, is it possible that this could turn out this way? And when that happens, when confusion shows up, it's like, ah, this is the door to progress, right? Because when a client's confused, it means they're open. It
Yeah.
means that the way that they've been thinking, they can put it aside. So, in a very very simple sense, part of what you do is that, and it's just absolutely absolutely brilliant. And so, if any of you are struggling with conception, and you're finding that everything that you've tried, you're doing all the things, and you're still not making progress, I highly recommend you reaching out to Dr. Katie Rose and seeing how she can help you. She has a wonderful, amazing program. I want to talk about that. Tell us a little bit about the program.
Oh, sure. So I have the Brilliant Fertility Program. I
Yeah.
started this in 2020. And while we still have that emphasis on supporting the physical body, how to nourish the body with food, how to get better sleep, how to support detoxification and supplementation properly, there is that strong emphasis on the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual work.
Mm,
Because when you are welcoming in a new person, a
mm,
new spirit who has their own path, we truly have to understand ourselves and how best to surrender the things that we don't truly have control over. And that difficult process is something that really is not addressed in the Western medical world at all.
I agree.
It's
I agree.
that it's just not a part of the conversation, unfortunately. And not to, downplay the power that exists within Western medicine, but when we're not addressing the whole person and their needs as an
Exactly.
individual, we're really missing the boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want to also emphasize that, like, even though the program has an 85% success rate, which is higher than IVF, it's there are still people who we can't make that guarantee for. And this work opens up a whole pathway of other possibility for them in enjoying their lives and being able to live a life that feels purposeful and meaningful and has joy
Yes.
regardless of whether or
Yes.
not that baby happens.
I love that you mentioned that because, you know, I've seen women in my sphere, you get so obsessed
Yeah.
because most women are drawn to be mothers. Like we just feel this, and I still feel it. That feeling will never go away for me. I will always have some sort of grief about not being able to have a child, and I chose not to adopt, and that was my choice. But it becomes an obsession, and then when if you don't kind of prepare for all options, and if you don't have the intention to consider all options and find happiness in other options, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Then it's going to be a very difficult path. And I love that you add that point of, if it doesn't happen, there is still happiness, and we can help you understand what that looks like and how to create that.
Yeah.
And that, for anybody, I think, who ends up suffering any kind of trauma or great disappointment, to know that life doesn't end at the disappointment or at the grief. It actually can begin there, and the power of what you're able to do with your process, to help really shift awareness and open up the pathway to happiness overall is just absolutely amazing. So now, is your program a membership? Is it something that you launch a couple of times a
It's a
year?
4-month program. We
Okay.
open up doors every about 2 months or so. So we'll have one cohort kind of moving out as another cohort's moving in, and then we'll still have members who are supporting each other within that. And so it does create this very intimate environment of everyone has this goal in mind, this common goal of wanting a baby, but everyone has a different background, a different experience. And because they're all being given these resources for emotional processing, the relationships that are formed within this are really powerful for healing as well, because you get to meet people who really understand what it's like to go through this, but it's not a complain fest, right? Like, we're
Yeah, for
creating an
sure.
environment of like,
Yeah.
bring your baggage in so that we can release it. Like,
Yes, that's the intention, and it's an amazing sisterhood, it sounds like, to know that you're not alone, and that other women, many other women are going through what you're going through, and that there are actual ways to turn your situation around and get help, and to be able to see life differently. So I love it. I think I just think that's doing God's work, and I'm just beyond impressed with you. And so let's talk about how we can work with Dr. Katie Rose. So tell everybody, I know you mentioned you have an offer, but really one of the best ways to stay connected to you is to hop on your newsletter.
yeah, I
Um,
always have some kind of freebie going. The best way to know about it is by hopping on my newsletter. And I have a webinar planned for next month, but who knows? By the time you're listening to this replay months from now,
It'll be actually be
I'll
next
have something
month.
even better. Yeah. So
Yeah,
I've
I
always
love it.
got something in the works to support people. And then
Okay,
being on the
yeah,
newsletter is the best way to know when program enrollment opens as well,
beautiful,
or you can hop on the wait list for that program too.
beautiful. And I want to give the web address for that. So it's HTTPS, is it semicolon, colon, uh,
Colon.
colon, // Katie Rose dot page, PAGE, / newsletter. So even if you just look up Katie Rose, Dr. Katie Rose online, you'll
If you
find her.
look up Dr. Katie Rose, you will find me. If you go
Right.
to at Dr. Katie Rose on Instagram, you will find me. And yeah, either me or my assistant is always, present in the DMs too. So if you've got a question coming up, we are there to support you.
Wonderful. Dr. Katie Rose, this is so funny. I thought when I first met her, I thought Katie Rose was her full first name. So I kept calling her Katie Rose. Hi, Katie Rose.
So this is so cute to me actually because my what the school that I went to starting about 4th grade was like this small Episcopalian school. And we had in 4th grade someone who just came in to teach our science classes, and she was from the South, and she thought the same thing. So for for
Oh,
the
good. I'm not alone
entire
in that.
for the entire rest, like, there are still, you know, people that I am friends with from that school who still like I will always just be Katie Rose
Yeah,
because
it just
that's
felt
what
right. Like Katie Rose. And then I realized her name is Dr. Katie Rose. I'm like, what a ding dong. Anyway, I'm okay being a ding dong, but
I will have people holler across. I ran into one of them at my son's school not too long ago, literally from across like an entire school courtyard. Katie Rose!
it just is beautiful together. That's all I got to tell you. She's
I
beautiful.
am blessed with this name. I'm really grateful that my mother
Seriously. There's some
chose
people
this
that have some
and
weird names. You do not want to have funky weird names. Y'all, that's awful for me to say. But anyway, Katie Rose is a beautiful name. And I have to tell you, she's
thank you.
beautiful in person and energetically as she is in what you're hearing today. And I know God blessed me with her in my life. And I pray that you're really feeling the benefit of this conversation today and that you can possibly consider that there's actually a life better than the one you're living it, and that the unconscious really working on those limiting beliefs and doing it in a way that actually works, not the crappy affirmations that you've
Yeah.
borrowed. They're empty, cold from somebody else who says, "Oh, they worked for me." Not those, but there are things that in this process that are so powerful. But Dr. Katie Rose, thank you, thank you, thank you for being such a light in my life and for helping me shift and change in ways that I didn't even know, and for doing what you do with women who struggle with fertility issues, and for being with me here today. I so grateful, and I hope listeners y'all appreciate it, and y'all reach out to Katie Rose. She's got some. See, I did it again. Katie Rose, she's got some amazing offers for you, and she's just phenomenal. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Janet.
I wish you a blessed day, a wonderful week, and as always, live intuitively.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend. And be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.